are live. You can go.
Okay, those of you who are not comfortable, we are live now. So if you wish, you can switch off your video because the recording will stay on internet after this. So yeah, I'll just start then. Hello everyone and welcome to Product People's weekly community event. I'm Utkarsha and I'm an associate PM with Product People, and today I'll be your host and will be moderating the session on behalf of Product People. I'll briefly start with the agenda for today. So initially I'll introduce Product People and what we do. We'll then start with the presentation, which will be followed by a Q&A session and networking session at the end. About Product People, we are a product management consultancy and we help companies efficiently discover and deliver great products faster. We do this through our engagements where we do all the hands-on and unglamorous work of a product manager on interim basis, and our contracts mostly last from 3 to 36 months. We onboard fast, align teams and deliver outcomes. We are also a product community builder with 6K members right now, and we invite product leaders to share their knowledge and experience around product management. And as you can see, Scout24, Zalando, Tier, Umio are some of our clients, among others, with whom we have worked and are currently working with. So these are our typical use cases where we are most effective. So if you got a new funding round and need to grow your product team by 1 to 5 PMs, then we would be the best people to look out for. Or if you are looking for PMs who are going on parental leave for 3 to 12 months, or PM who is leaving or has left your company, and as hiring a new PM will take quite some time, then we are there to support you there. Or if you have a temporary initiative that is important and urgent, or if you'd like someone to appraise the product team or the processes. So here is a quick glance of our current team. And we are also hiring right now for the product manager role to help our clients discover and deliver great products faster. And we are also looking for a talent acquisition manager who will help us recruit these product managers. So if you're looking for a new opportunity, then feel free to join, apply to these job roles on productpeople.join.com. So today we are glad to welcome Clyde, a senior product manager with Product People, and he'll be sharing with us knowledge and experience about recruiting product managers at the consultancy. So thank you, Clyde, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Utkarsha.
Yeah, you can share screen.
Yeah. Alrighty, I will assume everyone can see this.
Yes.
If not, just shout. Actually, one small change already that I have to note. I'm actually coming to you from Munich. The Product People is based in Berlin, but that's not a big deal. So thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate you being here. Just wanted to give you a quick outline of what we'll go through today. So I'll give you a quick intro about myself, and then 2 caveats about the whole sort of talk/presentation, and then 5 main points that we'll go through. And then at the end, we'll have plenty of time. We will have plenty of time for your questions because this will be a relatively short introduction, let's say. So intro, who am I and why should you listen to me? Well, I've been a PM for about a little over 5 years. And I actually in a previous life used to be a tech recruiter. So I obviously know everything about both product management and recruiting. Of course not. There's still much to learn. But it's sort of let's say a strange or unique sort of career path that I've had. So I don't know many or any product managers who've also been recruiters. Actually, sometimes I say that now that I've been a PM, I would be able to do my tech recruiting job way better than I used to like 10 years ago. But let's see if I decide to make another career change in a few years. I've started my product career at Babbel in Berlin, actually. So I was there for a few years. Then I went into venture building, had a couple of, founded a couple of startups in that sort of environment. And then I've also worked on some tech products. I was also, Babbel, e-learning, not tech, I meant digital health. They're obviously all tech. And then I started at Product People this past January. So it's been quite a ride over the past 7-8 months. So yeah, that's me. So 2 caveats. This goes to back to my point about, I'm not some kind of guru or anything, even though I've done some recruiting and done some product management as well. This list that you're about to see is not comprehensive. I think if you wanted to create a comprehensive list about everything that you needed to know or wanted to know about recruiting and recruiting for product, it would be endless. It would take an hour and nobody's going to listen to that. So these are just, 5 bullet points. And then the second thing to keep in mind is these are general principles. As with most other things in life, you're recruiting human beings, and human beings are different. They have different profiles. No one has the exact same career path. They haven't studied the same things or worked in the same environments. And even people who have had very similar career paths are different people. So you can't just say, okay, we're going to take a look at these, 4 or 5 or however many principles and say, this is going to be, clear cut, black and white type of thing. You're always going to have to take into account the human element, which we'll come back to in a few minutes. So the 5 points. And for those of you who are super into movies like I am, I've sort of made some subtle references and some very not so subtle references to movies. So throughout the thing, so you can look out for that if that's your thing. So first thing, to throw your degrees or your certificates in the trash. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, and that sort of led with maybe an over-exaggerated formulation of what I'm trying to get at. Obviously, this doesn't mean that the time that you spent studying any of your degrees or other certificates that you've done, this doesn't mean that those are worthless. What it does mean is that having a certain educational path or even doing certain certificates or courses, this does not guarantee you or anyone success in the product world. Almost all, if not all, of the people that I've met in my career that I consider solid product leaders and product managers, no one studied product management. I mean, I don't think you only now are kind of like official courses and ways of studying product management are being introduced in like a university level, but nobody I know, studied product management as part of their curriculum. Nobody even has like a certified, Scrum certified product owner. I don't even know what exactly the acronym is. That just goes to say that you can be a very good product manager without this formal type of education. And conversely, even if you have that formal education, that does not guarantee that you are going to be successful. So one of the things that we try to look for as a consultancy, but also as a product management consultancy specifically, we try to look for people that, of course, have some degree of experience. Product management, as you probably know, encompasses a wide range of skills, which we'll get to. But we try to not only look for people that have some experience, but also people that have shown potential. So we're not going to say our requirements are that you have to have done this studying or, this particular degree with these certificates. And if you don't have them, you're out. What we try to do is look at the whole picture of the whole profile and see if this person could be a good fit or not. So point two. So product people, and by that I mean product managers, not product people, us, the company. We are generalists. My philosophy of product has been for a while that product management is about relationships and relationship building, because as a PM, you are not the one that actually goes and builds anything, right? It's the engineers that will build the product. If you have a team with engineers, it's the designers that will create the UI and the UX. It's salespeople or customer service that have direct contact with your clients, customers, or user base on a daily basis. Obviously, as a product manager, you want to have as much contact with them as possible, but probably doesn't happen on a daily basis. So your task is getting people together and aligning them to move forward on this one goal, right? Your company goals, your product strategy. And in order to do that, you are not actually the ones that are subject matter experts. So you have to rely on these other people and these other roles. On top of that, as a consultancy, we're not stuck to one domain. So for better or for worse, I myself, just in the past year, have been working on a fintech client. I'm in a prop tech client, and also in marketing tech. So these are quite different. The products are really, really distinct. And this also means that, you're most likely not going to be in one domain for, 2 years, 3 years, really deepening your expertise in a particular area, right? You're going to be, for a few months, maybe half a year, you'll be on one client in a particular domain, and then you'll move on to another client. So you need to be able to have that flexibility, that generalist mindset, where you're not stuck to, how things are done in a particular industry, and that flexibility where you can adapt to different types of companies and different types of industries. So this is also something that we look for, people who have a broader experience. Of course, not, somebody's maybe bounced around every 6 months in a different job. This is probably a different problem that we maybe don't want to tackle, but we'd like to see people who have, a couple of years, maybe in this industry, a couple of years doing something else, also different size of companies that they've worked for, maybe different, cultures or different styles. So that kind of diversity of experience is also very well regarded. So yeah, it's not what you know, it's what you can learn. This sort of applies in two ways. There's a funny quote, if you've ever seen the movie Men in Black, and I'm sure this has been quoted in some other form in other areas, but Tommy Lee Jones' character, I think his name's K or J or one of those. He says like 1,000 years ago, human beings knew that the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, we knew that, I don't know, there was something else, center of the universe, something. That it was 1,000 years ago that, anyway, it doesn't matter. I can't really remember the quote. Then the quote goes on like, 5 minutes ago, you knew that, human beings were alone in the universe. Imagine what you'll know in 15 years or tomorrow or whatever. The point being is that stuff that you quote unquote know may or may not be the case, right? So there's always new knowledge coming out, new discoveries, new technology. So the stuff that you know or think you know may become obsolete or invalid. But even if it's the case that the things that you actually know are true, it's also the fact that society progresses, technology advances, things are done differently than how they were done, 5, 10, 15 years ago. And these days, it feels like things change yearly, right? Like if you think about how, I don't know, smartphones have revolutionized the way that we interact with people. I mean, 10 years ago, the thing didn't even exist. And now we basically can't live without them. So just to say that we look for people that are not stuck in the, let's say, self-confidence of their knowledge. So rather than like this fixed mindset that you may have read about or heard of, but we look for people who are really have a growth mindset. So maybe you have a certain amount of knowledge or a certain amount of experience, and this will allow you to, do your work to a certain level. And that may be a high level or not so high level, but that's sort of less important. If you're able to be open-minded and be open for feedback and be able to learn quickly, that we feel is more important than, the specific experience that you may bring, and then, you know how to do something. Because let's face it, if you've been doing something the same way for the past 10 years, you might know that really well. But when it comes time to do something else, maybe you might not be so adept. So we like to look for people that understand that they have limitations and that they want to grow, they want to learn things, and they're not just married to the stuff that they have already experienced, and are open to being proved wrong, to learning new things, and discovering what else is out there. So this one, I think people don't like working with you because you're a genius. It's not, it's because you're something else. I've also been asked to tone down the language a little bit. So this one is sort of becoming a no-brainer. I think when you ask around these days and you look at studies done by, for instance, Google, I think Project Aristotle and Project Oxygen or something like that, they basically did a survey or did a long-term study of their employees at Google to see what kind of traits and qualities were important for being successful at the organization. And lo and behold, it wasn't hard skills, right? So the stuff that you actually needed to learn or that you could learn like in a book, but rather it was all soft skills. It was being able to empathize with people, being able to listen, understanding where somebody else's needs, understanding how to communicate, knowing when to step in and get involved in something, and knowing when to take a step back and let things sort of run its course. And if you've worked in product at all, like sounds very familiar, right? So there's definitely a large impact that being a human being, understanding how to work with people, and not just being an expert in your particular area or domain that's going to make you successful. And this is also something that we look out for, because you might be really good at crafting product strategies and writing user stories and working with different frameworks. But if you don't really know how to talk to people, if you don't really understand how to listen, we probably won't think that you will be very successful. We've also had instances where we have turned down candidates who were technically very good, but culturally we felt that they were not a fit in the ways that they interacted with us in terms of certain things that they said. Also just a personal example, years ago, I worked with somebody who was, very, very high level, had, I don't know, something like 15 years experience, obviously very good at what they did. But for whatever reason, this person wasn't able to really get along with the rest of the team, rather than trying to persuade with argumentation and understanding, this is why we need to build this because of the user and data and such. This person would try to sort of bully the product teams into pushing their initiatives forward. And when the product people said no, they would kind of go and sneak around their back to talk to the engineers. This just wasn't a pleasant experience for anyone involved. People didn't like working with them. And in the end, they weren't successful at pushing their initiatives because not necessarily because the initiatives were bad. That could have been evaluated in another way. But if you rub somebody the wrong way, why would they be inclined to hear you out, right? So a big part of being successful, of being able to work together with people is actually your emotional intelligence and not just your sort of hard, IQ, let's say. So that's definitely something that we look out for. And then finally, crawling through a river of excrement and coming out clean on the other side. This has to do with perseverance and persistence. So, at a consultancy, especially as compared to maybe a typical company, you're going to go through a lot of stuff. Most of the times clients aren't bringing you in because things are hunky-dory and everything's working really well. Usually it's because someone's left, right? And now there's a void and a gap and you need to come in quickly, deliver something, make the ship right in some ways. And you're doing that over and over again. You're doing that with different clients in different contexts, different products and company sizes, different levels of politics. So, somebody who's able to be persistent, somebody who's got the attitude of, okay, well, even if I get knocked down, that's okay. Like, I'm just gonna keep going. Someone who's able to go through that and still sort of move forward. This is something that we really value quite highly because, it's not, product management is already stressful enough in any context when you're in, but obviously it's turned up a little bit in the ways that we practice it because we are not if a client for whatever reason isn't happy, then they're also free to kill the contract and we have to get the boot. So, it's a little bit of added stress. We want to make sure that we're delivering properly for our clients and we're, giving them value because they're also paying lots of money. So, this is definitely super important, similar to kind of a growth mindset, people who are able to take the hits and keep moving. That doesn't mean that you are stoic and you don't complain. We also have a couple of Slack channels where we're able to kind of vent our frustrations and also celebrate our wins. So definitely would encourage that to anybody who thinks that might be useful, because it's definitely is. You get a lot of laughs out of it as well. But yeah, someone who's able to kind of roll with the punches is definitely somebody that we look for. So just to give you a sense of, So just to give you a sense of how we've applied these principles, I guess, at Product People. Back when I started in January, we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I was permanent employee number 5, since we also do have short-term internships along the way. And then I joined sort of mid-January. And then I'm going to let this animation run just because it's satisfying. So bear with me. This is where we are today. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 18. So that's 20. So we've quadrupled in the past 7 months. So that's pretty good. So things are working so far. Let's put it that way. Yeah, so that was it. I guess that was a lot longer than I anticipated, but we can, if you have any questions, then please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Clyde, for the insightful presentation and for the interesting one-liners. So yeah, everyone, you are welcome to ask questions either verbally or on chat in the Zoom. And those of you who are joining us on YouTube or Facebook, will transfer your questions here. So by the time we get questions, I have one, Clyde. So what I've mostly heard and like seen like about product management is that it's not a job that you can start your career with. So it's usually people who have some experience that then transition into product management. So like, what is your opinion about this? How much important is previous experience?
Yeah, I think that's certainly true to an extent. I think somebody who has general life and job experience definitely will have the raw, let's say, tools or some sort of tool skill set that will help them in their first product management job. But I think that's also the case with a lot of things, right? Because if you have work experience, then most likely you'll have developed certain skills, particularly the soft skills, right? Like, you know how to communicate with people. Maybe you understand how to deal with politics to a certain extent. Maybe you work with people in your job, so you understand how to deal with difficult situations. And those are all things that are obviously very, very relevant for product. But I don't think that it's necessarily, yeah, okay. So I guess I'll say it like this. People that have work experience definitely have a leg up, but that doesn't mean that, you can't be a successful PM coming straight out of school, right? Especially if you're in an environment where you're given sort of the right tools and the right context to be able to grow those things. I do think, so I think there's potentially two ways. I don't know which way is better, but you can have the very soft route where, you have a very well-developed sort of training program and you're able to take things step by step. Or you have what I also know as the throw into the deep end and you just have to learn to swim method. That's similar to how I kind of developed when I first started in product. I had 6 line managers in the course of 2 years. And yeah, very, very little guidance in terms of how I should develop as a PM. So I think I've managed fairly well, but that could also, maybe if I was given a better environment, I could be even more advanced in my career than I am now. Who knows? But I think, yeah, that's very unique to every person. So short answer is yes, it's an advantage to have work experience, but that doesn't mean you're out of luck if you don't.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. So just to follow up on this one, so we also have seen that there are these associate PM programs. So they mostly recruit people who don't have experience, so who are like college graduates. So probably like there are both ways, as you mentioned. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are cool that they allow people that have, no real work experience to be able to like come into product, because generally, product is one of those areas where you do a lateral move, right? You've either worked as a engineer or salesperson or customer service. There's a lot of those types of people that then understand the product and move into a different role. So I think it's also cool that companies provide the opportunity to sort of start from the beginning.
Yeah. That's true. So we have some questions coming up on Zoom and YouTube. So I'll take the first one from Zoom. So it's from Mihai. So he asks that how do you validate or invalidate soft skills through the interviews?
Yeah. So maybe one thing that I sort of missed during my talk was this is also subjective, right? What some people perceive as assertive, other people will perceive as bossy. What some people view as contemplative and thoughtful, other people will see as shy and timid. So this is also partially the reason that, like, we product people, we don't have one person just doing the entire process. There's multiple people that rotate or that are involved at different stages. But for me to excuse me, to look at soft skills, you first you want to be able to assess their communication and how they interact with you sort of live, whether that means an actual in-person interview or some kind of video call. There you can get a pretty good sense of how this person communicates. When you ask questions, what is their demeanor like? Obviously, this doesn't tell you 100%, because you can spend an hour with somebody and you'll never be able to get it fully correct. Even working with somebody for 2 months, it might be fine, and then suddenly in month 3 things go south, right? So this is not like a foolproof process by any means, but you try to get them not only to talk about how the role itself and their skills and their experience, but you also try to get to ask them questions about like their person. So, what are their motivations outside of their work? What is their what do they like generally? So you can ask not only things about, substantively about the role, but you also try to get them to open up a little bit about kind of who they are and what drives them. And then you start to get sort of a picture of how they react and how they handle certain situations. One of the other things that we do is, we try to give behavioral questions, situational questions and scenarios to see, how people react, what are their first instincts. And we like to do that sort of on the fly, because obviously if you have a lot of time to sort of formulate an answer in a behavioral situation that is a bit more biased and probably a little bit less reliable. So we like to do those in more of a real-time way.
Thank you so much. I hope this answered the question. We have next question from Rizwan Ahmed, and I see he said, would you want to ask the question? You can unmute yourself, or I can also go ahead and ask.
Hi. By the way, good talk. And Clyde, I completely understand when you say how people approach each other when you talk first time. And I face the same situation. I'm very talkative. I'm very friendly, and people take that as you're too cocky for this job. And when I tell them I still have a long way to go to learn, they're like, "Are you sure? Why are you coming off as overconfident?" I said, "I'm not overconfident. I'm just trying to be friendly." Yeah. So I've been stuck in this situation where I've been working for single product companies. So I worked for the real estate industry, for the themes, loyalty, but they've always been a single product industry. So when do you know that you're ready and you have the skills enough that you can transition to a more flexible consulting role?
That's a good one.
So I'll tell you, I'll give you a little bit of context around this as well. I've seen that with consultants and with freelancers, people expect a lot more in your skill set than you find in a single product or a structured company, because they're like, okay, if you want to do Scrum, there's a Scrum Master. If you want to do, Discovery, there's a BA, there's a PMO for your timelines. But when you become a consultant, you have to roll all of that up into, a set of skills that may not be the best, but they are sufficient enough for you to fit into that kind of a mold?
Yeah, so this one is a little tough to answer because we actually, as a company, product people, we also have an internship program where we try to develop our interns into full-on product managers. And generally, these interns have zero product experience. So in that sense, there is no really ready. It's more of a, do you want it or do you want it enough? But I get the sense of your question, right? Because yeah, people, if you're coming in as a consultant or an outsider, freelancer, or whatever, I think there's generally an expectation that you know a lot and that you've experienced a lot. But I think it's also how you frame your story, because yeah, it could be that if you have 1 or 2 years of experience somewhere, it's probably not going to be the easiest to be able to transition into more like a consultancy type of role. But I think anywhere more than that, especially if you've been, at 1 or 2 companies, or if you've worked in an environment where things are fairly challenging, you feel like you've grown more than the amount of time, so to speak. Then I think it's a matter of how you tell your story and how you frame the experiences that you've had. Because yeah, I mean, even in just my short times at certain companies, you always have things that you can tell, experiences or certain situations that you've been in. And, not to say that you need to exaggerate that, but if you learn to tell it in a way that is sort of interesting and you have sort of a hook and then like a punchline, so to speak, of, why that was important, what you learned from it, how you were able to improve, certain things at the company or improve yourself. And I think those go a long way to convincing people that, hey, maybe you only have X amount of experience or whatever, but you've learned and lived a lot. So a lot of it is my colleagues will tell you, even some of the work that we do, even if we don't think it's that out of this world, we get like CPOs and VPs like raving about some of the work that we deliver, which for us is sort of like, oh, but this is just sort of how we normally do things. But for them, it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. So yeah, I'd say definitely hone your storytelling and the way that you frame the experiences that you've had, because if you've been in it for a few years, then you're probably ready in some sense, because most of the time, you'll be doing similar things, right? Like even if it's at different companies or different products, product development more or less follows a general trend. So you'll have that skill set already. And then it's just a matter of how you leverage your particular experience to speak to, the clients that you'll be interviewing with, let's say.
Amazing. So being an outsider, I've done very little to none in terms of consultancy. How long does one of these engagements on average last, that once you start? Because working in a product company, again, it's years on years and it's months on months, because as the vision develops, also your backlog develops, your tech debt develops, and you're in it for the long haul. But how's it like for a consultant? How do you let go of that backlog and move on to the next thing?
Yeah, so as I think Parsha mentioned earlier during the intro, our engagements last anywhere from 3 to 36 months, but average is somewhere in between, obviously. That's why it's an average. But I'd say like 6 to 12 months is a fair estimate.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you, Rizwan, for your question. So I see that many people joined a bit late, and I just wanted to give this notification that we are live on YouTube. So if any one of you is not comfortable with your video, then yeah, feel free to switch it off. So yeah, I'll now take questions from YouTube. We have a question from Mark. So he asked that, do you just resource product people into your clients, or do you go with a full product team, including developers and QA, etc.? Yeah.
No, we are only product managers, so we exclusively work in product. We don't have any devs or designers or QA or anything like that.
Another question from Mark again. So he's asking, how do you balance working as a product manager for clients whilst being part of your own company? I feel product roles require a lot of focus, plus this is often tricky.
Yeah, with difficulty, let's say. Yeah, it's a matter of time management and prioritization, right? Just like being in a product role. So I'm product managing my own product management experience or something like that. Yeah, so it's obviously you tend to prioritize your client work, and then you try to also prioritize the stuff that you're working on within the company, because yeah, we're also trying to build a brand, build a business, expand our client base, and recruit, really good product people. So it's a lot of prioritization and good time management, and also some delegation. So those three things, I would say, is how I'm able to do it, to a certain extent, let's say.
Thank you so much, Clyde, for answering this. So I'll take another one from YouTube. So Victoria asks, what was the most unexpected interview or candidate?
Let me think. Unexpected interview or candidate. That's hard to say. We get, so not only my role here, but also in the past, we get a lot of people from lots of different backgrounds, and I don't just mean like, countries or things that they grew up in, but obviously also things that they studied, their previous work experience. If I had to pick one, can I pick myself? Maybe just as a quick story, like, so I studied philosophy, law, and then international relations, was a tech recruiter and then an English teacher. And then I ended up in product management, right? So I know that there are even stranger paths that people can take to get to this role, but I guess I find mine one of the more unique. And yeah, actually, I had my first manager actually had a similar experience. So maybe I was, I struck a chord in terms of having some similarities with her, and she kind of empathized with that and gave me a chance. So, but yeah, it's hard to say that whether there was any real outlier in terms of candidates, at least successful candidates. You get random candidates all the time that have really, not even close to the experience that we're looking at, right? So they've worked at like in retail as like a retail sales clerk, and it's like, well, it's nice that the ambition is there, but we're not sure if you've understood the job description in that case. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for answering this slide. So I'll now take questions from Zoom, and I see one from Andre. So Andre, do you want to ask the question yourself?
Yeah, let me open my own question. So I ask, are clients already product mature, or are they trying to dive into the product mindset? You know, namely, do they already understand how is it to work in a product mindset team, you know, collaboration all over the place, you know, and cross-functioning and so on? Or they just like, okay, yeah, it's great to work on a product, you know, product team, it's just great, embrace it, and then you're not ready for it. And so as a product manager, you kind of have to be like teaching them as well how to work with you and how to get the best out of the whole team.
Yeah, so our clients have really run the gamut in terms of where they are as a product. So early startups versus, you know, rather large corporate clients. Most of the time, the product function doesn't actually function the way that it probably should, which doesn't mean that we don't try to coach and you know, kind of tweak processes as we go along. But most of the time we're brought in to fill a particular role, right? Like someone left and there's an opening on the team or a gap in the team, and we just sort of need to make sure that the processes are running and delivery is still happening. So we're not always asked to tweak that whole process and rework how the product management function, you know, works at that organization. But it's rare that you go into a company, even very successful companies, and the way that they do product is, you know, sort of like an ideal type of situation. You know, usually they're road mapping 3 months ahead and saying these are the 10 features that we want to build, right? Discovery is more about finding a solution than understanding the problem.
Yeah.
The clients are, even product companies are driven by engineering or by sales rather than by product thinking. So there's a lot that you know still needs to develop, but that's usually the case for most of our engagements.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you, Andre, for the interesting question. I'll take the next one from Hamad. He asks, how do you think the CV of a PM with experience be structured, and what do you look out for?
So yeah, coming from my recruiting background, you probably heard something, you know, that the average recruiter will spend something like 10 seconds looking at your CV, maybe 5 seconds, because that's also a numbers game in the recruitment field, right? Like recruiters are judged based off of the number of profiles they go through and the number of calls they make. So it's in their interest to get through as many as possible, which means it's in your interest as a candidate to fill the things and highlight the things that they're going to be looking for. So it definitely should be structured clearly. These CVs that are packed to the brim with images and colors, and yeah, God knows what. These are, of course, that doesn't necessarily indicate whether you're a good product person or not, but it does make me question sort of your understanding of how the recruitment process goes. And also sometimes it makes me question whether you understand like good UX principles, because yeah, if you're just packing as much information as you can into one sheet without any regard for how the information is structured or what it looks like, then that's really not ideal. So it should be very clearly laid out with a clean format. Title should be very prominent, along with 2 or 3 bullet points of the things that you've achieved or the things that you've done, using strong, like active verbs about the things that you've actually done. You want to highlight the things that you drove forward, and you want to make sure that these, the companies that you worked for, the roles that you had, these are all clearly laid out. And you want to avoid sort of nebulous things like putting things on a scale of, your degree of this is, on some kind of line chart where you're self-assessing how you do in a particular skill without even any kind of a real framework of like, what is, beginner, intermediate, and expert. These are things that I see all the time, and I don't, that doesn't give me much information, right? Lots of people say that they're experts in, I don't know, SQL, or you'll have PMs that say, oh yeah, I do JavaScript. People will say that they're fluent in a particular language and they can say 5 words. So these sort of self-assessments, I don't find very valuable. What is valuable is describing in clear and concise language what you've actually done at the company, what your role was, what the company was. And yeah, the easier it is to read, the more we're able to pick up on the key things that we're looking for. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Clyde, for an interesting answer to this one. So being mindful of the time, I just wanted to mention that we have 2 more questions on YouTube. Would you want to answer them now, or should we follow up with them later?
Oh, let's go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just ask this one. So it's a follow-up from the previous question. So the question is, do you find it difficult going to market with just product resourcing? Have you found clients looking for the full package, and what do product people do in this scenario? So it's the follow-up question about if we have developers or people.
It's not something that we encounter that often. And we've found that demand for our services is actually pretty good. The last year has been fairly solid. But if it's the case that someone's actually looking for a designer or something else, then we can also reach out to our network to see if somebody's willing to contract through us or be referred. But as far as I'm aware, it's not something that happens super often. And yeah. So I think you're on mute, Nikash.
Sorry. So yeah, I'll take a last question from YouTube. So Johan asks, if you're not a product manager yet, what are exemplary roles that prepare you with the right experience? Are, for example, requirements engineer or even Scrum Master roles preparing you in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I think almost all jobs can prepare you in some way for product, right? Because product is one of the nice roles where you have to kind of pull on, or what's the word? You have to make use of lots of different skill sets. And so that means that while it is difficult to hone and refine all of those, it also means that no matter what you're doing, you're gaining experience that will be helpful. So, even the example that I gave earlier about the person, like the retail clerk, we're not going to be able to hire that person, but they have experience, they have experience selling, they have experience dealing with probably difficult customers. They are probably very persistent and what's the noun for to persevere? Anyway, this is what happens when you live outside of your native country for X amount of time. But yeah, even someone like that has been building a skill set that would help them if they were eventually to, transition into a product role. So obviously, if there are things that are interesting to you, like being a Scrum Master or going into engineering, design, those areas, of course, those will be more helpful because they're more relevant to the practice of product management in a tech context. So if you're interested in pursuing one of those, then by all means, and that would help. That would, you know, bring you a long way into getting into product. But it also doesn't mean that like there's a certain path, right? Because as I said, my own example, I didn't work in tech or startups or anything until I was in my 30s, and then I transitioned to product. So it's definitely doable. I have sort of an interesting story about how I got my first product role, which I didn't feel was necessarily relevant to this talk, so I haven't gone into it. But if you're interested in connecting at some later point, then feel free to reach out over LinkedIn or something like that, and I can tell you about how I got my first product role.
Okay, thank you so much, Clyde, for answering this. And yeah, we'll now stop streaming and we'll continue networking on Zoom. So those of you who have joined us on YouTube or Facebook are welcome to join us on Zoom now. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us tonight and for asking interesting questions. And thank you, Clyde, for the presentation and taking up all the questions and answering them.